Welcome to your worst fear. They said it was just a story, a myth buried in time. But some nightmares never sleep. Chapter 1. The Invitation. The wind howled through the desolate streets of Virginia City, Nevada, carrying with it the faint scent of dust and decay. The old Washoe Club loomed at the edge of C Street, its three-story facade a relic of the Comstock Loan's glory days. Its windows, dark and hollow, stared out like the eyes of a corpse. Once a haven for silver barons and gamblers, the club was now a monument to forgotten sins, its walls whispering tales of violence, greed, and unexplained deaths. The locals avoided it after dusk, claiming the air grew heavy and the shadows moved on their own. Elliot Kane, a paranormal investigator with a weathered leather jacket and a permanent scowl, stood before the club's entrance, his breath visible in the chilly October air. At 38, he'd seen his share of haunted places, crumbling asylums, abandoned churches, even a slaughterhouse in Kansas where the screams never stopped. But something about the Washoe Club felt different. The job offer had come 2 weeks ago. An email from an anonymous client promising $50,000 to investigate the club's third floor, notorious for its spectral activity. The catch? He had to bring a team and stay for 7 nights. No one had ever lasted more than 3. Elliot glanced at his team, each member silhouetted against the fading twilight. Mara Ruiz, the psychic medium, clutched her silver pendant, her dark eyes scanning the building as if it were a predator. At 29, she was the youngest, but her sensitivity to the unseen made her indispensable. Beside her stood Dr. Victor Hensley, a skeptical historian in his 50s, his tweed coat and wire-rimmed glasses giving him the air of a professor who'd wandered into the wrong century. He adjusted his satchel, muttering about historical context, outweighing ghost stories. Rounding out the group was Caleb Voss, a burly ex-marine turned tech specialist, his shaved head gleaming under the streetlights as he checked the batteries on their EMF meters and infrared cameras. "This place looks like it wants to eat us," Caleb said, his voice low but steady. He slung a backpack over his shoulder, packed with gear to capture whatever lurked inside. Mara shivered, her fingers tightening around her pendant. "It's not the building, it's what's inside. Something old, something hungry." Victor snorted, pushing up his glasses. "Superstition. This club's history is tragedy, not malevolence. Miners died, fortunes were lost, and people drank themselves to death. No need to invent ghosts." Elliot ignored the bickering, his gaze fixed on the club's double doors, their paint peeling like flayed skin. He'd read the stories. The Blue Lady, a spectral prostitute who haunted the second floor. The gambler who blew his brains out in the poker room. The children's laughter echoing from the attic, though no children had lived there in a century. But it was the third floor that chilled him. Witnesses reported footsteps, screams, and a presence so oppressive it drove a local priest to flee, babbling about the devourer. "Last chance to back out," Elliot said, his voice flat. No one moved. He nodded and pushed open the doors. Interior smelled of mildew and old whiskey, the air thick with dust that danced in the beams of their flashlights. The grand staircase, once polished mahogany, creaked underfoot, its banister carved with faded cherubs, whose faces seemed to leer. The first floor was a maze of shadowed parlors and a bar room, its mirrored wall cracked and fogged. Caleb set up base camp in the bar, laying out monitors and motion sensors, while Mara paced, her lips moving in silent prayer. "It's stronger upstairs," she whispered, pointing to the staircase. "The energy, it's like a heartbeat." Victor rolled his eyes but followed as Elliot led the way. The second floor was colder, the air heavy with the scent of lavender and rot. Empty bedrooms lined the hall, their wallpaper peeling to reveal stains that looked disturbingly like blood. Mara froze at one door, her hand trembling. "She's here," Mara said. "The Blue Lady. She's watching." Elliot's flashlight flickered, casting jagged shadows. "Keep moving," he said, though his skin prickled. They climbed to the third floor, the stairs groaning as if resisting their ascent. The air grew denser, pressing against their chests. The third floor hallway was narrow, its walls blackened as if scorched, though no fire had ever been recorded. Doors lined both sides, each marked with strange scratches. Claw marks, Elliot realized with a jolt. Caleb's EMF meter spiked, its needle dancing wildly. "This isn't normal," he muttered, checking the device. "It's like the whole floor's alive." Mara clutched her pendant so tightly, her knuckles whitened. "We're not alone. There's too many. They're crowding us." Victor scoffed but fell silent as a low moan echoed from the end of the hall. Elliot's flashlight caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow darting into a room. He motioned for the team to follow, his heart pounding. The room was empty save for a cracked mirror and a single chair, its upholstery stained dark. The moan came again, closer, from behind the mirror. "Who's there?" Elliot called, his voice steady despite the dread coiling in his gut. The mirror rattled, and a voice, low, guttural, and not entirely human, answered. "You shouldn't have come," Mara screamed, backing into Caleb, who grabbed her shoulders. Victor's face paled, his skepticism crumbling. Elliot stepped toward the mirror, his flashlight shaking. The glass rippled like water, and for a moment he saw a face, not his reflection, but something gaunt, eyeless, its mouth stretched into a lipless grin. Then the lights went out. The darkness was absolute, swallowing their flashlights and plunging the room into a void. Mara's screams turned to sobs, and Caleb cursed, fumbling with his gear. Elliot shouted for everyone to stay calm, but his voice was drowned by a cacophony of whispers. Hundreds of voices overlapping, speaking in languages he couldn't understand. The air grew colder, the temperature plummeting until their breath frosted. Something brushed against Elliot's arm, cold and clammy, like a hand without bones. "Get to the stairs," he yelled, groping for the door. The whispers grew louder, forming words. "Stay! Join us! Feed!" Caleb's flashlight flickered back on, revealing the room's walls, now covered in writhing shadows, their shapes humanoid but wrong, limbs too long, heads twisting unnaturally. Mara collapsed, clutching her head as blood trickled from her nose. Victor grabbed her arm, dragging her toward the hall, while Elliot and Caleb fought to keep the shadows at bay. Their flashlights barely cutting through the dark, they stumbled down the stairs, the shadows pursuing, their whispers now screams. The second floor was no safer. Doors slammed shut as they passed, and the lavender scent turned to sulfur. The Blue Lady appeared at the end of the hall, her translucent form shimmering in a tattered dress, her eyes black voids. She pointed at them, her mouth opening in a silent wail. "Run!" Elliot roared, shoving his team towards the grand staircase. They reached the first floor, collapsing in the barroom, where Caleb's monitors flickered with static. The shadows didn't follow, but the air remained heavy, the club's walls creaking like a living thing. Mara, trembling, wiped blood from her face. "They're not ghosts," she whispered. "There's something else. Something that feeds on pain." Victor, his face ashen, clutched his satchel. This isn't possible." Caleb checked the cameras, his hands shaking. The third floor's footage is gone, erased, but the motion sensors are still going crazy up there. Elliot stared at the staircase, the darkness above seeming to pulse. They'd been in the club less than an hour, and already it felt like a trap. The anonymous client, the money, the 7-night stay, it was all bait. "But for what? We're not leaving," he said, his voice hard. "Not yet. We need answers." Mara shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "You don't understand. It wants us to stay. It's already inside us." As if in response, the club's walls groaned, and from the third floor came a sound like laughter, low, cruel, and endless. Chapter 2. The first night. The barroom became their sanctuary, though the word felt like a mockery. Caleb rigged motion, sensors around the perimeter, their red lights blinking like eyes in the dark. The team huddled around a camping lantern, its weak glow barely pushing back the shadows. The club's air was stifling, the scent of mildew now laced with something metallic, like blood. Outside, the wind screamed, rattling the windows, but no one suggested leaving. The doors were locked, not by their hand, and the keys were missing. Elliot checked his watch, 2:17 a.m. They'd been inside 6 hours, but it felt like days. Mara sat cross-legged, her pendant glowing faintly as she muttered protective chants. Victor pored over his notes, scribbling furiously the club's history. Murders, suicides, a fire in 1875 that never made the papers. Caleb monitored the screams, his jaw tight as the third floor's sensors continued to spike. "We need a plan," Elliot said, breaking the silence. "We can't just sit here." Mara's eyes snapped open, her voice hollow. "It's listening, every word. It knows what we're thinking." Victor slammed his notebook shut. "Enough with the mysticism. We're dealing with environmental factors, magnetic fields, infrasound, maybe carbon monoxide. That's what's causing the hallucinations." Caleb pointed at the monitors. "Hallucinations don't erase footage, Doc, or lock us in." Elliot ignored them, his mind replaying the voice from the mirror. "You shouldn't have come." It wasn't a warning. It was a promise. He stood grabbing a flashlight. "I'm going back to the third floor. Alone." Mara grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his skin. "Don't! It'll take you." "I've faced worse," he lied, shaking her off. He didn't mention the dread gnawing at him, the sense that the club wasn't just haunted, it was alive. The staircase seemed longer this time, each step echoing like a heartbeat. The second floor was silent, the Blue Lady gone, but the air was thick with malice. Elliot's flashlight flickered as he reached the third floor. The hallway now colder, the claw marks on the doors deeper. He moved toward the room with the mirror, his boots crunching on something. Glass, he realized, though the mirror was intact. He stood before it, his reflection distorted, his face stretching into something not quite human. "Show yourself," he whispered. The mirror rippled, and the eyeless face returned, its grin wider. "You're mine," it hissed, its voice echoing inside his skull. The room spun, the walls closing in, and Elliot felt a pressure in his chest, like hands squeezing his heart. He stumbled back, the flashlight dropping, and the darkness swallowed him. Downstairs, Mara screamed, clutching her head as visions flooded her mind. Elliot, trapped in a void, his body twisting as shadows tore at his soul. She collapsed, blood dripping from her ears, and Caleb caught her, shouting for Victor to help. The historian fumbled with a first aid kit, his hands shaking as he tried to rationalize what he'd seen. "She's having a seizure," Victor said, though he didn't believe it. The air was growing colder, the lantern dimming. Caleb's monitors went black, then flickered back on, showing the third floor hallway. But it wasn't empty. A figure stood there, tall and thin, its limbs unnaturally long, its head featureless except for a gaping mouth. "That's not Elliot," Caleb whispered, grabbing a crowbar from his pack. Mara gasped, coming to. "It's not human. It's the Devourer. It's been here since the beginning." Victor's skepticism cracked. "What the hell is it?" "It's what killed the miners," Mara said, her voice trembling. "The club was built on their graves. It feeds on suffering, and now it wants us." The monitors flickered again, and the figure was gone. But the sensors screamed, and from the staircase came the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, descending. Elliot woke on the third floor, his flashlight dead, the mirror now cracked. His chest ached, and his hands were smeared with something dark. Blood, he realized, though he had no wounds. The air was thick with whispers, urging him to stay, to surrender. He stumbled into the hall, the claw marks now forming words, "Give in." He ran, the shadows chasing, their forms coalescing into figures, miners with crushed skulls, women with slit throats, children with empty eyes. They reached for him, their touch burning, and he felt his memories fraying, his sense of self slipping. He reached the staircase, collapsing on the second floor, where the blue lady waited. "Help me," he croaked. Her black eyes bored into him. "You brought this," she whispered, her voice like wind through bones. "You woke it." She vanished, and Elliot staggered downstairs, collapsing in the barroom. The team rushed to him, but he could barely speak, his eyes wild. "It's not ghosts," he gasped. "It's a god." The footsteps reached the first floor, and the lantern went out. Chapter 3. The Devourer's game dawn should have brought relief, but the club's windows showed only darkness, as if the sun had abandoned them. The team relit the lantern, its flame weak, and checked their gear. The cameras were dead, the batteries drained despite being new. Caleb's motion sensors were silent, but the air was heavier, the metallic scent now overpowering. Elliot sat against the bar, his face pale, his hands still stained with blood that wasn't his. He hadn't spoken since his collapse, his eyes darting to the staircase as if expecting something to emerge. Mara tended to him, her chants growing frantic, while Victor scoured his notes, desperate for a rational explanation. Caleb paced, crowbar in hand, his military training useless against an enemy he couldn't see. "We're trapped," Caleb said, kicking a chair. "The doors won't budge, and the windows are like steel. We're not getting out." Mara looked up, her pendant glowing faintly. "It's not the club keeping us here. It's the Devourer. It's playing with us." Victor threw down his pen. "This Devourer nonsense is just folklore. The Washoe Club's history is violent, yes, but there's no evidence of a supernatural entity." "Evidence?" Mara snapped, pointing at Elliot. "Look at him. Look at this place. You felt it last night, Victor. Don't lie." Victor's mouth opened, then closed. He'd seen the figure on the monitors, felt the cold that wasn't natural. His rationality was crumbling, and he hated it. Elliot stirred, his voice hoarse. "It showed me things. The miners, they didn't just die. They were sacrificed. The club was built to trap it, but it's too strong. It's been waiting." "For what?" Caleb asked, gripping the crowbar. "For us," Elliot said, his eyes hollow. "It needs pain, fear, souls." The club groaned, the walls shifting as if breathing. A child's laughter echoed from above, followed by a scream that cut off abruptly. Mara clutched her pendant, her lips trembling. "It's starting again. We have to fight it." "How?" Victor asked, his voice small. "We find its source," Elliot said, standing despite his weakness. "The third floor. The mirror. It's connected." Caleb shook his head. "You barely survived last time. We go together, or not at all." They armed themselves, crowbars, knives, Mara's protective charms, and climbed the staircase. The second floor was different now. The wallpaper gone, the walls raw and pulsating like flesh. The blue lady appeared again, her form flickering, her wail now audible. "Leave, or become it." "We can't," Elliot said, his voice firm. "Show us how to stop it." She pointed to the third floor, then dissolved into mist. The team pressed on, the air growing colder. The claw marks now oozing a black, viscous liquid. The third floor hallway was a nightmare. The doors gone, replaced by gaping maws that whispered their names. The mirror room was at the end, its door sealed shut. Caleb pried it open, revealing a chamber which shouldn't exist. The mirror was massive now, covering the far wall, its surface rippling like a black sea. The eyeless face was there, but it wasn't alone. Dozens of faces pressed against the glass, their mouths screaming silently. "You're ours!" The Devourer's voice boomed, shaking the floor. The team's flashlights died, and the faces emerged, their forms solidifying into twisted versions of the dead. Miners, gamblers, children, all eyeless, all grinning. Mara chanted, her pendant flaring, and the figures recoiled. Caleb swung his crowbar, shattering one, but it reformed, laughing. Victor froze, muttering about impossibility, while Elliot lunged at the mirror, smashing it with his knife. The glass shattered, and the room erupted in screams. The faces vanished, but the Devourer's laughter filled the air. "You can't destroy me," it said. "I am the club. I am you." The team fled, the hallway collapsing behind them. They reached the bar room, but the club was changing. Walls bleeding, floors cracking, the air thick with the stench of death. Mara's pendant shattered, and she screamed, blood pouring from her eyes. "It's in my head," she sobbed. "It's eating me." Elliot grabbed her, shaking her. "Fight it, Mara. We're not done." But the laughter grew louder, and the shadows returned, circling like vultures. Chapter 4. The Breaking Point. The barroom was no longer safe. The walls pulsed, the mirrors cracked, reflecting not the team, but their fears. Mara's dead mother, Caleb's fallen comrades, Victor's childhood abuser, Elliot's sister, who died in a fire he couldn't prevent. The devourer was inside them now, peeling back their minds like skin. Mara sat in a corner, rocking, her eyes bloodshot. "It knows everything," she whispered. "Every secret, every sin." Caleb smashed a mirror, his knuckles bleeding. "Then we fight dirty. We burn this place down." Victor shook his head, his voice trembling. "Arson won't kill it. It's not physical. It's eternal." Elliot stared at the staircase, the darkness above now a void. "We need to find the source. The mirror was a gateway, but there's something deeper. The basement, the club's basement was rarely mentioned in records, but Victor's notes hinted at a sealed chamber, used during the club's early days for private rituals. The team descended, the air growing colder, the walls now stone, slick with moisture that smelled of decay. The basement was a labyrinth, its corridors twisting illogically, lit by flickering torches that shouldn't exist. They found the chamber, its door carved with symbols Mara recognized. Wards meant to contain, not protect. Inside was an altar, stained black, surrounded by bones. The air was thick with the devourer's presence, its laughter now a physical force pressing against their skulls. "It's here," Mara said, her voice breaking. "This is where it was born." The altar pulsed, and the bones rose, forming a figure, the devourer, its body a mass of writhing limbs, its face a void. "Feed me," it demanded, and the team's minds splintered. Caleb saw his daughter, dead in his arms. Mara saw herself drowning in blood. Victor saw his own corpse, eyeless. Elliot saw the club burning, himself trapped inside. Mara chanted, her voice weak, and the figure roared, its form destabilizing. Caleb attacked, his crowbar useless against the bones. Victor, driven by desperation, grabbed a torch and set the altar ablaze. The flames spread, unnatural, blue, and the devourer screamed, its voice shattering the chamber's walls. They ran, the fire chasing, the club collapsing around them. The basement became a maze of flame and shadow, the devourer's voice echoing, "You cannot leave me." They reached the barroom, the fire gone, but the club was different, smaller. The walls pulsed, the mirrors cracked, reflecting not the team, but their fears. Mara's dead mother, Caleb's fallen comrades, Victor's childhood abuser, Elliot's sister, who died in a fire he couldn't prevent. The devourer was inside them now, peeling back their minds like skin. Mara sat in a corner, rocking, her eyes bloodshot. "It knows everything," she whispered. "Every secret, every sin." Caleb smashed a mirror, his knuckles bleeding. "Then we fight dirty. We burn this place down. Victor shook his head, his voice trembling. Arson won't kill it. It's not physical. It's eternal. Elliot stared at the staircase, the darkness above now a void. We need to find the source. The mirror was a gateway, but there's something deeper. The basement, the club's basement was rarely mentioned in records, but Victor's notes hinted at a sealed chamber, used during the club's early days for private rituals. The team descended, the air growing colder, the walls now stone, slick with moisture that smelled of decay. The basement was a labyrinth, its corridors twisting illogically, lit by flickering torches that shouldn't exist. They found the chamber, its door carved with symbols Mara recognized, walls meant to contain, not protect. Inside was an altar, stained black, surrounded by bones. The air was thick with the devourer's presence, its laughter now a physical force pressing against their skulls. It's here, Mara said, her voice breaking. This is where it was born. The altar pulsed, and the bones rose, forming a figure, the devourer, its body a mass of writhing limbs, its face a void. Feed me, it demanded, and the team's minds splintered. Caleb saw his daughter dead in his arms. Mara saw herself drowning in blood. Victor saw his own corpse, eyeless. Elliot saw the club burning, himself trapped inside. Mara chanted, her voice weak, and the figure roared, its form destabilizing. Caleb attacked, his crowbar useless against the bones. Victor, driven by desperation, grabbed a torch and set the altar ablaze. The flames spread, unnatural blue, and the devourer screamed, its voice shattering the chamber's walls. They ran, the fire chasing, the club collapsing around them. The basement became a maze of flame and shadow, the devourer's voice echoing, "You cannot leave me." They reached the barroom, the fire gone, but the club was different. Smaller, the walls closing in. Mara collapsed, her breathing shallow. "It's not dead," she gasped. "It's us now." Elliot looked at his team, their faces wrong, eyes too wide, mouths twitching. The devourer was inside them, and he didn't know how to stop it. Chapter 5. The Possession. The club was shrinking, its rooms merging, the barroom now a cage. The team's sanity frayed, their memories blurring. Caleb kept seeing his daughter, her face eyeless, begging him to join her. Mara heard the devourer's voice in her chants, twisting them into curses. Victor's notes were illegible, written in a language he didn't know. Elliot felt the club inside him, urging him to kill, to feed. "We're losing," Mara said, her voice barely audible. "It's rewriting us." Elliot grabbed her shoulders. "Then we rewrite it back. We find its weakness." Victor, clutching his ruined notes, spoke up. The rituals, the wards, they weren't to trap it. They were to bind it to the club. If we destroy the wards, we might destroy it, or set it free, Caleb said, his eyes wild. They searched the barroom, finding a hidden panel behind the bar, carved with the same symbols as the basement. Mara traced them, her fingers burning, and the panel opened, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. The lower basement was a void, its walls infinite, the air alive with whispers. At its center was a pool of black liquid, pulsating the devourer's heart. The team approached, their shadows twisting, their reflections in the pool showing their true forms, monsters, eyeless, grinning. "It's us," Mara whispered. "It's always been us." The Devourer's voice filled the void. "You are mine. Feed me and live forever." Caleb lunged at the pool, splashing the liquid which burned his skin. Mara chanted, her voice breaking, and the pool rippled, the Devourer's form rising, a colossus of bone and shadow. Victor smashed the wards, and the pool erupted, the liquid flooding the chamber. They ran, the liquid chasing, dissolving the club's walls. The barroom was gone. The club, a nightmare of shifting rooms and screaming shadows. Mara fell, the liquid consuming her legs, and she screamed, her body twisting into something else. "Mara!" Elliot grabbed her, but her eyes were gone, her mouth a void. She laughed, the Devourer's voice, and attacked him. Caleb pulled Elliot back, and they fled, Victor trailing, his mind gone. The club was collapsing, the Devourer's laughter deafening. They reached the entrance, the doors now open, but Mara was gone, her screams echoing behind them. Chapter 6. The End. The team stumbled into the street, the club's doors slamming shut. The town was silent, the sky grey, as if the world had paused. Elliot, Caleb and Victor collapsed, their bodies trembling, their minds fractured. Mara was gone, her fate unknown. But Elliot felt her presence, twisted inside the club. "We didn't win," Caleb said, his voice hollow. "We just survived." Victor stared at his hands, stained with the black liquid. "It's still in us. It will always be in us." Elliot looked at the club, its windows now black voids, its walls pulsing. The Devourer wasn't gone. It was waiting, patient, eternal. He saw the anonymous client's email in his mind, the words now clear. "Feed it and you'll understand." They left Virginia City, but the club followed. Caleb woke screaming, his daughter's face in his dreams. Victor burned his notes, but the words reappeared, written in blood. Elliot saw Mara in mirrors, her eyeless face grinning, whispering his name. The old Washoe club stood empty, its doors locked, but the locals knew better. The shadows still moved, the whispers still called, and somewhere, deep inside, the Devourer waited, hungry for the next to answer its invitation. Chapter 7. The Hunger Beyond the Road. Out of Virginia City was a ribbon of grey, flanked by barren hills that seemed to watch the rusted pickup truck as it sped through the door. Elliot Kane gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, his eyes bloodshot from sleeplessness. Caleb Fox sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, his crowbar resting between his knees like a talisman. Victor Hensley slumped in, the back, his tweed coat stained with the black liquid from the club, his hands trembling as he clutched a notebook filled with gibberish. The air inside the truck was thick with unspoken dread, the silence broken only by the engine's rattle and the occasional sob from Victor. Mara was gone. Her screams still echoed in Elliot's mind. Her eyeless face burned into his memory. The old Washoe club had let them go, but it hadn't released them. The Devourer's laughter lingered, low hum in their skulls, and the black liquid from the pool clung to their skin, no matter how much they scrubbed. They'd driven for hours, but the club felt closer than ever, its shadows stretching across the desert. "Where are we going?" Caleb asked, his voice rough, barely above a whisper. Anywhere but here, Elliot said, though he didn't believe it. The Devourer wasn't bound to the club. It was in them, in the air, in the world. He'd seen it in the rearview mirror, a flicker of movement, a gaunt figure with no eyes, grinning from the road behind. Victor muttered something incoherent, his fingers tracing the symbols in his notebook. It's not over, he said louder. It's never over. The wards, I broke them. I set it free. Shut up, Caleb snapped, his hand tightening on the crowbar. You don't know that, but Elliot knew. The Devourer had been caged in the club, bound by rituals older than the town itself. The miners' sacrifices, the blood-soaked altar, the wards. They'd held it, weakened it. Now, with the wards shattered and Mara consumed, it was unbound, and they were its heralds. The truck hit a pothole, jarring them. Elliot's vision blurred, and for a moment, the road was gone, replaced by the club's third-floor hallway, its walls bleeding, its doors screaming. He blinked and the desert returned, but the air was colder, the sky darker, as if the sun were retreating. We need to stop, Victor said, his voice urgent. It's doing something to us. I can feel it. No stopping, Elliot said. Not until we're far enough. There is no far enough, Victor whispered, and Caleb turned, his eyes wild. Then what? We just wait for it to eat us? Elliot didn't answer. He didn't have one. They pulled into a gas station just outside Reno, the neon sign flickering like a dying star. The clerk, an old man with sunken eyes, watched them from behind the counter. His gaze lingering too long, Elliot paid for fuel and coffee, ignoring the clerk's muttered warning about strange folk passing through. Caleb stayed by the truck, scanning the shadows, while Victor sat on the curb, scribbling in his notebook, his pen leaving trails of black ink that looked disturbingly like blood. Elliot handed Caleb a coffee, its heat doing little to warm the chill in his bones. You see anything out there? He asked, nodding toward the desert. Caleb's jaw tightened. Not yet, but it's watching. You feel it too, don't you? Elliot nodded. The Devourer's presence was a weight on his chest, a whisper in his thoughts. He saw Mara's face in every reflection, the gas station's window, the truck's side mirror, even the coffee's surface. Her voice called to him, not pleading but commanding. Come back, feed it. Victor stood, his notebook falling to the ground, pages scattering. It's here, he hissed, pointing at the gas station. The clerk was gone, the counter empty, but the lights flickered and the air grew heavy, the scent of mildew and blood replacing the desert's dust. Get in the truck, Elliot said, his voice low. They scrambled inside, but the engine wouldn't start. The lights died, plunging the station into darkness. And from the shadows came a sound. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, circling them. Caleb raised the crowbar, his breath ragged. It followed us. It never left us, Victor said, his eyes wide. It's in our blood. The footsteps stopped, and the truck's windows fogged. Claw marks appearing on the glass, forming words. You are mine. The temperature plummeted, their breath frosting, and the radio crackled, spitting static and a voice. Low, guttural, the Devourers. Feed me. Elliot slammed the key into the ignition, praying, and the engine roared to life. He floored the gas, the truck lurching forward. But the shadows moved with them, figures forming in the desert. Miners with crushed skulls, women with slit throats, children with empty eyes. They lined the road, their mouths open in silent screams, their hands reaching. "Drive faster!" Caleb shouted, but the truck was slowing, the engine choking. The figures closed in, their touch burning through the metal, and Victor screamed, clawing at his face as blood poured from his eyes. Elliot swerved, the truck skidding onto a dirt road, the figures vanishing. The engine stabilized, but the air was still cold, the claw marks still on the windows. Victor slumped, his face streaked with blood, his notebook now blank except for one word, repeated endlessly, "Devour." They found a motel in Sparks, a rundown place with peeling paint and a flickering vacancy sign. The clerk, a tired woman with a smoker's cough, didn't ask questions, just handed them a key to room 13. Elliot didn't like the number, but they had no choice. They needed rest, a plan, anything to keep the devourer at bay. The room was small, its walls stained, the air thick with the scent of old cigarettes and something worse. Lavender and rot, like the club's second floor. Caleb set up motion sensors, their red lights blinking, while Elliot checked the windows, finding them sealed shut. Victor sat on the bed, staring at his hands, the black liquid now under his nails, spreading like veins. "We can't keep running," Victor said, his voice hollow. "It's not just following us, it's growing." Mara's absence was a wound, her fate a question they couldn't answer. Elliot saw her in his dreams, her body twisted, her voice the devourer's, urging him to surrender. He hadn't slept since the club, afraid of what he'd see when he closed his eyes. Caleb checked the sensors, his face grim. "Spiky! Something's here!" Elliot grabbed a knife from his pack, its blade useless against the devourer, but comforting in his hand. "Stay sharp, we don't let it in." But it was already in. The room's mirror cracked, and Mara's face appeared, her eyes gone, her mouth a void. "You left me," she whispered, her voice echoing inside their skulls. "But I'm still with you." Victor screamed, lunging at the mirror, smashing it with his fists. The glass shattered, but Mara's laughter filled the room, and the walls pulsed, the stains forming faces, eyeless, grinning, the devourer's legion. The sensors screamed, and the lights died, plunging them into darkness. "Hold the line!" Elliot shouted, but the air was thick with whispers, urging them to give in. Caleb swung his crowbar, hitting nothing but air, while Victor collapsed, blood dripping from his ears. Elliot felt the devourer's touch, cold and clammy, wrapping around his heart, squeezing. The door burst open, and the clerk stood there, her face wrong, eyeless, her mouth stretched into a grin. "Feed it," she said, her voice the devourer's, and the room erupted in shadows, their forms solidifying into the club's dead. Elliot fought, his knife slashing, but the shadows were endless, their touch burning, their whispers tearing at his mind. Caleb grabbed Victor, dragging him toward the door, but the clerk blocked their path, her body twisting, her limbs elongating. She lunged and Caleb swung, his crowbar cracking her skull. But she laughed, the black liquid pouring from her wound. They ran, the motel collapsing behind them, the shadows chasing. The truck was gone, consumed by the desert, and they stumbled into the night, the devourer's laughter deafening. The desert was alive, its sands shifting, forming faces, hands, mouths. The stars were gone, the sky a void, and Elliot knew they weren't in sparks anymore. They were in the club, its walls infinite, its hunger eternal. They found refuge in an abandoned diner, its windows boarded, its tables covered in dust. The air was still, but the devourer's presence was there, watching, waiting. Caleb barricaded the door, his hands shaking, while Victor sat in a booth, muttering about wards and rituals, his mind fraying. Elliot searched the diner, finding a trapdoor to a basement, its lock rusted but intact. "We need to know what it wants," Elliot said, his voice steady despite the fear. "Why us? Why now?" Victor looked up, his eyes hollow. "It doesn't want, it needs. Pain, fear, souls, it's a parasite. The club was its cage, but we're its vessels. It's spreading through us." Caleb kicked a table, his face twisted. "Then we cut it out. We end this." "How?" Victor asked, his voice breaking. "It's not flesh. It's not spirit. It's everything." Elliot opened the trapdoor, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. The air was cold, the scent of blood and mildew overwhelming. "The answers are down there," he said, though he didn't know why he was certain. The devourer was guiding him, pulling him deeper, and he hated it. They descended, the basement a mirror of the club's lower chamber. Stone walls slick with black liquid, an altar at its center, surrounded by bones. But this altar was alive, pulsating, its surface rippling like the pool in the club. Mara stood before it, her body twisted, her skin grey, her eyes gone. She smiled, the devourer's grin, and spoke. "You brought me home, Mara." Elliot whispered, his knife trembling in his hand. "Fight it!" "There's no Mara," she said, her voice a chorus of the dead. "Only us." The altar erupted, the black liquid flooding the basement, and the bones rose, forming the devourers. Colossus, limbs writhing, face a void. It roared, the sound shattering their minds, and the team's visions returned. Caleb's daughter, Victor's abuser, Elliot's sister, all eyeless, all grinning. Caleb charged, his crowbar useless against the Colossus, and the liquid consumed him, his screams fading as his body dissolved. Victor fell to his knees, chanting words that did nothing, and the devourer's touch burned his skin, his bones twisting. Elliot stood alone, Mara's face before him, her hand outstretched. "Join us," she said, and Elliot felt the pull, the promise of peace, of oblivion. But he saw his sister's face, her screams from the fire, and he refused. He lunged at the altar, smashing it with his knife, the liquid burning his skin. The Colossus screamed, the basement collapsing, and Elliot ran, the liquid chasing, the devourer's voice in his head. "You cannot escape." He reached the diner, the trapdoor sealing behind him, but the shadows were there, the faces in the walls, the whispers in the air. Caleb and Victor were gone, their fates unknown, and Elliot was alone, the devourer's mark on his soul. He stumbled into the desert, the diner gone, the world a void. The club stood before him, its doors open, its windows black. Mara waited inside, her grin eternal, and Elliot knew he couldn't run. The devourer was in him, and it would never stop. He stepped inside, the doors slamming shut, and the laughter began again. Chapter 8. The endless moor. The doors of the old Washoe Club slammed shut behind Elliot Kane, sealing him in darkness thicker than any night. The air was heavy, saturated with the stench of blood and decay, and the walls pulsed like a living heart, their rhythm sinking with the frantic beat of his own. He clutched his knife, its blade now coated and stained with the black liquid that seemed to seep from everything. The floor, the ceiling, his own skin. The Devourer's laughter filled the space, not just a sound, but a force, pressing against his skull, threatening to crack it open. Elliot stood in what should have been the club's bar room, but the room was wrong. The bar was gone, replaced by a vast cavernous void, its edges lost in shadow. The grand staircase loomed ahead, its steps spiraling upward and downward into infinity, defying the building's physical limits. The mirrors that once lined the walls were now portals, their surfaces rippling like oil, reflecting not Elliot, but fragments of his past. His sister's burning face, Mara's eyeless grin, Caleb's dissolving body, Victor's twisted bones. Each reflection whispered his name, their voices overlapping, urging him to surrender. "You can't run," Mara's voice said, echoing from everywhere and nowhere. She stood at the base of the staircase, her form flickering between the woman he'd known and the Devourer's vessel. Grey skin, elongated limbs, a mouth stretched too wide. "You're already part of it." Elliot's grip tightened on the knife, his voice hoarse. "I'm not yours." Her laughter was a blade, cutting through his resolve. "You've been mine since you answered the call. The email, the money. You thought it was chance?" The realization hit him like a blow. The anonymous client, the $50,000, the 7-night stay. It wasn't a job. It was a summons. The Devourer had chosen him, not for his skills, but for his pain, his guilt, his capacity to feed its endless hunger. He saw his sister's face again, her screams from the fire he couldn't stop, and felt the Devourer's touch, cold and clammy, wrapping around his memories, twisting them into knives. He ran, not toward the doors, they were gone, but up the staircase, its steps shifting underfoot, each one a gamble. The club was no longer a building, it was the Devourer's mind, a labyrinth of torment designed to break him. The second floor was a nightmare of pulsating flesh, the walls oozing black liquid that formed hands grabbing at his ankles. The Blue Lady appeared, her translucent form now decayed, her dress rotting, her black eyes bleeding. "You woke it," she hissed, her voice a chorus of the dead. "You fed it." "Tell me how to stop it," Elliot pleaded, his breath ragged. Her wail was a gust of freezing air. "You can't. It's older than the earth. It's the hunger beneath." She dissolved and the hallway stretched, doors appearing on both sides, each marked with claw marks that bled. Elliot chose one, driven by instinct, and found himself in a room that shouldn't exist. A mining tunnel, its walls rough-hewn, its air thick with dust and the metallic tang of blood. Skeletons lined the floor, their skulls crushed, their bones carved with the same symbols Victor had found in the basement. The miners, sacrificed to the Devourer, their deaths the club's foundation. A figure emerged from the shadows, a man in a tattered suit, his face gaunt, his eyes gone. "You're late," he said, his voice the devourer's low and guttural. "The ritual needs blood." Elliot swung his knife, but the figure vanished, its laughter echoing. The tunnel collapsed, and he was back in the club, the third floor. Now, the hallway, a maze of mirrors, each showing a different version of himself. Broken, eyeless, grinning, the claw marks on the walls formed words, "Feed me." He stumbled into the mirror room, its glass now a towering monolith, its surface a black sea. The eyeless faces pressed against it, hundreds now, their mouths screaming silently. Mara's face was among them, her grin the widest, her voice the loudest. "Join us," she said, and the glass rippled, her hand reaching through cold and grey, grabbing his wrist. Elliot slashed, the knife cutting through her arm, but it reformed, the black liquid knitting it back together. The mirror shattered, and the faces poured out, their forms solidifying into the club's dead. Miners, gamblers, children, all twisted, all hungry. They swarmed him, their touch burning, their whispers tearing at his mind. "Give in, become us." He fought, his knife useless, his strength fading. The Devourer's presence was a weight, crushing his will, and he felt his memories slipping. His sister's name, his team's faces, his own identity. But a spark of defiance remained, fueled by guilt, by rage. He broke free, running deeper into the club, the staircase now descending, leading to a place he hadn't seen but knew, the Devourer's heart. The lower basement was a cathedral of bone, its walls a mosaic of skulls, its floor a pool of black liquid that pulsed like a heartbeat. The altar from Chapter 5 was here, larger, alive, its surface writhing with faces, thousands, millions, the Devourer's victims across centuries. Caleb and Victor stood before it, their bodies wrong, their skin grey, their eyes gone. They turned, their mouths opening in unison, the Devourer's voice booming, "You cannot destroy what is eternal." Elliot's heart sank. His team was gone, consumed, their forms now extensions of the entity. But he saw something in Caleb's hand. The crowbar, its tip stained with the black liquid, trembling as if fighting the Devourer's control. A flicker of hope ignited. They weren't entirely lost. "Why me?" Elliot demanded, his voice shaking but firm. "What do you want?" The Devourer's laughter was a storm, shaking the chamber. "You are pain. You are guilt. You are the feast I've craved since the stars were born. This world is my table, and you are its offering." The altar pulsed, and the liquid rose, forming a colossus, limbs of bone, a face of void, its presence a violation of reality. It reached for Elliot, its touch dissolving his skin, and he screamed, his mind fracturing. But Caleb moved, his crowbar swinging, striking the altar, the impact cracking its surface. Victor's body twitched, his lips muttering words, weak but defiant. The Colossus roared, the chamber shaking, and Elliot saw his chance. He lunged at the altar, plunging his knife into its heart, the black liquid burning his hands, his arms, his soul. The faces screamed, the Colossus faltered, and Caleb swung again, his crowbar shattering the altar's core. The chamber collapsed, the liquid flooding, the skulls crumbling. Elliot grabbed Caleb and Victor, their bodies heavy, their forms flickering between human and monster. They ran, the club dissolving around them, the staircase now a spiral of light and shadow, leading nowhere and everywhere. They emerged in a desert, the club gone, the sky a bruised purple, the air thick with ash. The ground was littered with bones, their surfaces carved with symbols, and the wind carried whispers. "Feed me." Elliot's hands were burned, his skin peeling, but he was alive. Caleb and Victor lay beside him, their breathing shallow, their eyes human again, though haunted. "We didn't kill it," Caleb said, his voice raw. "We just hurt it." Victor nodded, his notebook gone, his hands clean but trembling. "It's older than us, older than time. It'll come back." Elliot stared at the horizon where the club's silhouette flickered, a mirage that wasn't a mirage. The devourer was wounded, but it was patient. It had eternity. He saw Mara's face in the sky, her grin fading, and felt her absence like a wound. She'd fought in her way, and he'd failed her. "We keep fighting," Elliot said, standing, though his body screamed in protest. "We find its source, its true name. We end it." Caleb laughed, a bitter sound. "You think we can? I think we have to," Elliot said. And Victor nodded, his skepticism gone, replaced by a grim resolve. They walked, the desert endless, the bones crunching underfoot. The devourer's laughter was faint now, but it was there, waiting. The world was its domain, and they were its prey. But Elliot refused to surrender. Not yet. Behind them, the club reappeared, its doors open, its windows black. A new email waited in Elliot's mind, its words clear. "Come back. Feed it." He ignored it, but the pull was there, and he knew, deep down, that the devourer wasn't done. Chapter 9. The Name of the Void. The desert stretched endlessly before Elliot came, a wasteland of ash and bone, under a sky that bled purple and black, as if the heavens themselves were bruised by the devourer's presence. His boots crunched on skulls carved with ancient symbols, each step a reminder of the entity's timeless hunger. Caleb Voss walked beside him, his crowbar slung over his shoulder, his face gaunt, his eyes haunted by the memory of his daughter's eyeless face. Victor Hensley trailed behind, his tweed coat torn, his hands clutching air where his notebook used to be, his muttering a constant drone of half-forgotten wards and broken theories. The air was thick with the scent of blood and mildew, and the wind carried whispers that weren't the wind. "Feed me. Join us." Elliot's hands were raw. The black liquid from the club's altar burned into his skin, forming veins that pulsed with a life of their own. He hadn't slept in days, maybe weeks. Time was unraveling, the devourer's influence bending reality into a nightmare. The old Washoe Club loomed on the horizon, its silhouette flickering like a mirage, its doors always open, always waiting. He ignored it, but the pull was stronger now, a hook in his soul, tugging him back. "We can't keep walking," Caleb said, his voice rough, cracking from thirst and fear. "There's nothing out here, just more bones." "There's something," Elliot said, his gaze fixed on the distance where the desert seemed to ripple, as if hiding a truth. "It's guiding us, guiding us." Victor's laugh was brittle, his eyes wild. It's herding us like cattle. The devourer doesn't guide, it consumes. Elliot didn't argue. Victor was right, but admitting it felt like surrender, and he refused to give in. Not after Mara, not after the club, not after seeing his sister's burning face in every shadow. The devourer had taken too much, and he'd fight until it took him too. The desert shifted, the ground trembling, and a structure emerged from the ash. A church, its steeple crooked, its walls blackened as if scorched by a fire that never died. Its windows were stained glass, but the images were wrong. No saints, no angels, just eyeless faces, their mouths open in silent screams. The door was ajar, and from within came a sound. Children's laughter, twisted, layered with the devourer's growl. Caleb gripped his crowbar, his knuckles white. This isn't real. It can't be. It's as real as the club, Elliot said, his knife in hand, its blade now warped, as if melting under the devourer's touch. We go in. Victor shook his head, backing away. It's a trap. You know it is. Everything's a trap, Elliot said, his voice hard. We either face it, or we die running. The church's door creaked wider as they approached, the laughter growing louder, joined by whispers in languages they didn't know but understood. Give in, feed it. The interior was vast, far larger than the building's exterior, its pews filled with shadows that moved like people, their forms flickering. Miners, gamblers, women in tattered dresses, children with hollow eyes. At the altar stood a figure cloaked in black, its face hidden but radiating malice. You seek my name, the figure said, its voice the devourer's, a chorus of screams and laughter. You think it will save you? Elliot stepped forward, his knife trembling. Tell me what you are, why you exist. The figure's cloak rippled, revealing not flesh, but a void, a darkness that swallowed light. I am the hunger before creation. I am the void that birthed the stars. Your kind built altars to cage me, but you only fed me. Your pain, your fear, your souls, they are my sustenance. Caleb swung his crowbar, but it passed through the figure, the air rippling like water. Then why us? Why the club? The figure's laughter shook the church, the stained glass cracking, the shadows rising. The club was a door, built on blood, sealed with sacrifice. You opened it. You are my heralds, carrying my hunger to the world. Victor's muttering stopped, his eyes wide with realization. The symbols, the wards, they weren't just to trap you. They were to name you. To know you is to bind you. The figure's void face pulsed, and the church trembled, the pews collapsing into dust. Speak my name, and you will join me. Deny it, and you will suffer. The shadows swarmed, their touch burning, their whispers tearing at Elliot's mind. He saw his sister, her body charred, her voice pleading, "Why didn't you save me?" Caleb saw his daughter, her face eyeless, her hands reaching. Victor saw his own corpse, its mouth moving, chanting words he couldn't understand. Elliot fought, his knife slashing, but the shadows were endless, their forms coalescing into Mara's. Grey skin, elongated limbs, her grin eternal. You left me, she said, her voice ablaze. But I'm still here. He stumbled back, the altar now a pool of black liquid, its surface reflecting not the church, but the club's third floor. The mirror room, the faces pressing against the glass. The figure loomed over him, its void face splitting into a maw, and Elliot felt his soul fraying, his memories dissolving. "Fight it!" Caleb shouted, his crowbar striking the altar, the liquid splashing, burning his skin. Victor chanted, his voice weak but steady, piecing together fragments of the wards, the symbols glowing faintly on the floor. The figure roared, the church collapsing, the shadows screaming. Elliot grabbed the knife, plunging it into the pool, the liquid searing his flesh, his bones, his mind. The figure's maw widened, and he saw it. Not just a void, but a cosmos. A universe of devoured souls, their screams eternal. He saw Mara, trapped inside, her face twisting, fighting to reach him. "Name it!" Victor yelled, his chants growing, louder, the symbols flaring. "It's in the bones, the blood, the club. It's always been there." Elliot's mind burned, the Devourer's presence of fire. But he saw the symbols carved into his memory, into the desert, into the world. He spoke, his voice breaking, the name forming like a wound. Vorinkar. The church erupted, the liquid flooding, the shadows dissolving. The figure screamed, its void face fracturing, and the altar shattered, the pool drying into ash. Elliot collapsed, his body burning, his mind splintered, but the laughter was gone, the whispers silent. They woke in the desert, the church gone, the sky grey, the bones still there but still. Caleb's hands were burned, his crowbar warped, but he was alive. Victor's face was bloodied, his eyes clear for the first time, the wards etched into his memory. Elliot lay on the ground, his knife gone, his hands scarred, the black veins fading but not gone. "We named it," Victor said, his voice trembling. "We bound it." "For now," Caleb said, staring at the horizon, where the club's silhouette flickered, fainter but present. "It's not dead." Elliot stood, his body aching, his soul heavy. Naming the Devourer, Vorinkar, had weakened it, forced it back into its cage, but the cage was cracked, and its hunger was eternal. He saw Mara's face in his mind, not grinning but pleading, and knew she was still trapped somewhere in the void. "We find the source," Elliot said, his voice steady despite the pain. "The club, the miners, the rituals. It started somewhere. We trace it back." Caleb nodded, his jaw tight. "And if it's older than the world, then we burn the world," Elliot said. And Victor flinched, but didn't argue. They walked, the desert shifting, the bones whispering. But the club was clearer now, its doors open, its windows black. A new summons waited, not an email, but a feeling, a pull in their blood. Come back, naming again. Elliot ignored it, but the name, Vorinkar, burned. In his mind, a key and a curse. The Devourer was waiting, and the world was its feast. Chapter 10. The First Altar. The desert was no longer just a wasteland. It was a graveyard, its sands littered with bones that whispered the name. Elliot Kane dared not speak aloud. Vorinkar, each step he took felt like a betrayal, as if the ground itself were an extension of the Devourer, pulling him closer to the old Washoe Club, which flickered on the horizon like a wound in the sky. His hands, scarred and veined with fading black lines, ached with the memory of the altar's burning liquid. Caleb marched beside him, his crowbar now twisted, its metal pitted as if corroded by the Devourer's touch, his eyes hollow from visions of his eyeless daughter. Victor Hensley shuffled behind, his tweed coat in tatters, his mind a fragile mosaic of wards and symbols. The name Vorincol, both his salvation and his curse. The air was thick with ash and the stench of blood, the sky a churning void where stars flickered and died. Time was meaningless, hours blending into days, the desert stretching infinitely, yet always leading back to the club. Elliot's dreams, if he slept, were filled with Mara's face, her pleading eyes trapped in the Devourer's maw, and his sister's screams, blaming him for the fire he couldn't stop. The guilt was a chain, binding him to Vorincol, and he knew the others felt it too. Caleb's loss, Victor's shame, their souls marked by the entity's hunger. "We're not finding anything," Caleb said, his voice raw, breaking the silence. He kicked a skull, its carved symbols glowing faintly before crumbling to dust. "This place, it's not real. It's just another cage." "It's real enough," Elliot said, his gaze fixed on a shimmer in the distance, a structure rising from the ash. "And it's showing us something." Victor stopped, his hands trembling as he traced a symbol in the air. The wards, they're older than the club, older than the miners. The name, Vorincol, it's not just a name. It's a key to its origin. If we find where it began, we can end it, or die trying, Caleb muttered. But he tightened, his grip on the crowbar, his resolve unbroken. The structure ahead solidified. A stone tower, its surface etched with the same symbols that haunted their nightmares, its peak piercing the sky like a blade. Its base was surrounded by a moat of black liquid, pulsating, alive, the same substance that had consumed Mara. The tower's door was open, a yawning maw, and from within came a sound. Not laughter, but a low, rhythmic chant, ancient and guttural, in a language that clawed at their minds. "That's where it started," Elliot said, his knife in hand, its blade now blackened, as if absorbing the Devourer's essence. "The first altar." Victor's eyes widened, his voice a whisper. "The miners. They didn't build the club to trap it. They found it. Something older, buried in the earth." Caleb spat into the sand. "Then let's burn it down." They approached the tower, the black liquid rippling, forming hands that reached for them, whispering their names. Elliot's skin burned where the liquid had touched him, the veins pulsing faster, and he felt Vorincol inside him, urging him to kneel, to feed. He pushed forward, the chant growing louder, the air heavier, the symbols glowing like embers. The tower's interior was a spiral, its walls a tapestry of bone and stone, carved with scenes of sacrifice. Figures in robes, their faces eyeless, offering blood to avoid. The chant came from below, a staircase descending into darkness, each step slick with the black liquid. The team descended, their footsteps echoing, the walls closing in, the air so cold their breath frosted. The chamber at the bottom was vast, a cathedral of obsidian, its ceiling lost in shadow, its floor a mosaic of skulls, their eyes replaced by glowing symbols. At the center stood the first altar, a monolith of black stone, its surface writhing with faces, millions, their mouths open, their screams silent but felt, a vibration that shook Elliot's bones. Mara's face was there, her eyes pleading, her form trapped in the stone, and Elliot's heart broke, his guilt a physical pain. "You've come," a voice said, not from the altar, but from everywhere. Vorinkol's voice, a storm of hunger and malice. Figures emerged from the shadows. Cloaked priests, their faces voids, their hands holding knives of bone. "You've named me. Now you'll serve me." Caleb swung his crowbar, shattering one priest, but it reformed, its laughter a blade. Victor chanted, his wards flaring, the symbols on the floor glowing. But the priests advanced, their knives gleaming, their voices joining the chant. Elliot lunged at the altar, his knife striking its surface, the impact sending a shockwave through the chamber, the faces screaming. The black liquid rose, flooding the chamber, burning their skin, dissolving their resolve. Elliot saw his sister, her body aflame, her voice accusing, "You let me die." Caleb saw his daughter, her face a void, her hands pulling him under. Victor saw his own reflection, eyeless, chanting Vorinkol's name, and he screamed, his wards failing. "You cannot destroy what is eternal," Vorinkol said, its presence a colossus, its void face filling the chamber. "It's more, a universe of devoured souls. Your world is mine, your pain is my feast." Elliot fought, his knife cutting deeper, the altar cracking, the faces fading. Caleb joined him, his crowbar smashing, the liquid burning his flesh, his screams mingling with the chant. Victor fell to his knees, his hands tracing symbols, his voice weak but defiant, binding Vorinkol's name to the altar, to the tower, to the earth. The chamber shook, the priests dissolving, the liquid receding, the altar split, a light bursting from its core, blinding, searing. And Elliot saw Mara, not trapped but fighting, her form glowing, her voice clear. "End it, Elliot, for me!" He plunged his knife into the light, the chamber erupting, the tower collapsing, the symbols fading. The Colossus screamed, its void face fracturing, and the chamber became a void. The team falling, their bodies weightless, their minds burning. They woke in a forest, the desert gone, the tower gone, the sky a sickly green, the air thick with rot. The trees were twisted, their bark carved with symbols, their branches forming faces. Eyeless, grinning, whispering Vorinkol's name. Elliot's hands were blooded, his knife gone, but the black veins were fainter, the pain less. Caleb lay beside him, his crowbar melted, his skin scarred but whole. Victor sat against a tree, his eyes clear, his hands still, the wards now part of him, etched into his soul. "We heard it," Caleb said, his voice a rasp. "Again?" Victor nodded, his voice steady. "The first altar, it was the source. We broke its anchor, but it's not gone. It's in the world now, weaker but free." Elliot stood, his body aching, his mind heavy with Mara's final words. She'd fought, given him a chance, and he'd failed to save her, but he'd honored her sacrifice. The forest was alive, the trees moving, the faces watching, and he knew Vorinkol was still there, its hunger undiminished. "We find the next altar," Elliot said, his voice hard. The miners, the priests, the club, they all served it. There's more. We hunt them down. Caleb laughed, a broken sound. You're crazy, Cain, but I'm in. Victor stood, his resolve unbroken. The wards, I know them now. I can bind it again, maybe forever. They walked, the forest shifting, the faces whispering, the club's silhouette appearing through the trees, its doors open, its windows black. A new pull tugged at Elliot's blood, not a summons, but a challenge. Find me, end me. He ignored it, but Vorinkol's name was a fire in his mind, a weapon and a wound. The world was a battlefield, and they were its soldiers marked by the devourer, bound to its hunger, but fighting, always fighting.